This is Flipping the Script podcast, the soon-to-be #1 leadership podcast for purpose-driven leaders and great guest experts who give us a unique insight into what leadership looks like behind the scenes. I'm Shalia Stafford, your host, and I'm committed to helping you lead your challenges using leadership strategies to gain new perspectives, fuel your growth, and transform the way you execute on your success. Welcome back, everyone. It's Shalia here. Are you investing? No, I'm not talking about the stock market. I'm talking about the capital that is contained within your career and the skills that no one taught us that can help optimize our return in the journey that we're going to be on for the next total probably 47 years of our lives. Because from the age of 18 to 65, we spend a lot of time investing into our careers. And our careers give us the options in life to experience what matters most to us. And it provides the foundation for the next generation. I want to shed some light on this topic and provide a few strategies to help you optimize your career capital. Today, I am thrilled to introduce Mark Hirschberg, founder, author, speaker, and MIT instructor. Mark has spent his career launching and developing new ventures at startups and Fortune 500s and in academia. Having taught at MIT for over 20 years, Mark created the Brain Bump app and is the author of the Career Toolkit, Essential Skills for Success That No One Taught You. Mark, welcome to the podcast. We're so excited to explore your journey and hear more about what your story has created up until this point in your life.
Thanks for having me on. It's my pleasure to be here.
Okay, Mark. So as a tradition of the show, we like to ask our guests a few fire away questions to get to know you better. Shall we fire away?
Fire away.
Okay. What is something that you're curious about right now?
I'm spending a lot of time thinking about the future of media.
Oh, I like that. And what is something that you understand about your life today that you didn't understand a year ago?
A year ago, that's an interesting time frame. I'd say that things are just working out despite the volatility. I just need to relax and have faith that all the work I've done for the years prior have set me up that when I have challenges, they just seem to work out. But it's not magic. It's because of the hard work I put in to my foundation.
So complete this thought. I wish I had paid more attention when.
I wish I had paid more attention when I was growing up to social cues and social skills, because that was a huge weakness of mine and one of the motivations for writing the book.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's something I think I could also take into play. So when was the last time you felt guilty?
That's a good question. That is, I think, extremely rare for me. When I was very young, I read a book. This is before the World Wide Web. And in the book, a grandfather said to the main character, live your life as though everything you do was going to be printed on the front page of the New York Times. And I thought that was wise advice. That's how I've lived my life. When I think about doing something, if I would be embarrassed, if my parents knew, if my friends knew, then I shouldn't be doing it. So very rarely do I feel guilty about things.
That takes a lot of discipline.
Yeah, unless we're counting maybe eating junk food. That I suppose maybe that counts as guilty.
Absolutely. That'll do it to all of us. Okay, so if you woke up tomorrow and you discovered that everything in life was now free, what's the first thing that you would do?
Well, these are really good questions. I would think about the implications for society, because the structure of our society is based on limited resources and how we compete for them. And so this would imply a fundamental structural change to our society. I'd want to think through what is now going to happen.
I like that. That's something that my 8-year-old is also interested in. He said, Mommy, why can't we just go back to bartering everything?
We can talk about economic theory and the efficiency of money.
He would probably love that. So if your 109-year-old self were to get into a time machine and travel right back to this very moment in life and give you one piece of advice, what would he say to you?
Stop waiting to have kids, get them out as fast as possible.
Oh,
But I'm probably not the limiting factor at the moment.
yeah. That's a hard one, yeah. And so if you had to break up your life up until this point into 3 chapters, what would you name each chapter?
Growing up a nerd, coming of age, moving the world forward.
I love that. Okay, so now I'm curious. What are your values?
That's not a short answer. But I would say some of my key values. We talked about one, which is feeling that everything I do is appropriate. Integrity is very important, that I keep my word, that I do the right thing even when it costs me. Those are things I value very much. I also believe in intellectual curiosity, and I believe all of us have an obligation to make the world better. We are in the world as is today because people got together and said, let's improve it. If you think back to the world 100 years ago, 500 years, 1,000 years ago, we are better off because of science, because of increased freedom, because of increased economic opportunities, increased voice in our governance. All of this is because people put forth effort, often at great personal cost, to get us here today. And it's incumbent upon all of us to continue to move the world forward for those who are coming tomorrow.
I love that. And so, Mark, values sometimes seem to sound or feel intangible to most of us. They sound like words, right? Words that look hard to decipher in our day-to-day life, especially when we get things wrong, and especially when we don't know what to do. What do you think most of us get wrong about values?
It's that, as you note, actions and words are disassociated, and often we think of values top down. I'll give a corporate example. How often do companies say, we're going to go spend a 2-day retreat and we've got an expert coming in, and at the end we've got, here's the 7 values, and they put it on their website. So, well, these are our values. But when you look at how they actually behave, when you look at the day-to-day experience, it's very different. Here's an example I use in my book. A value might be, we put the customer first. But when you're actually in the office, I know one guy who said the value was whoever screamed the loudest at the meeting won. And this is how disputes got resolved. That was not a value on the website, but that was a practical, here's how things work. This is what we value. The loudest voice is the most valuable. And so we have to really think about how we are behaving and see that our values come from our behavior. And then if we don't like them, we have to change our behavior and our values will come out of that. Instead of this top down, well, I said it's my value, so I think it's all set now.
Yes. And I mention this because part of being a leader is getting clear on our story and setting the direction. And a big aspect of that is understanding our values that help determine the direction or how we move in that direction. And so when I think about our audience and the people who are listening to our conversation, a value that they have in life is to experience life in a way that is imperfectly conscious, so to speak, meaning we're not a monk, but the goal is to understand our behaviors that drive and create action around the story that we want to experience and creating intentionality around our lives. And so a big part of that is our career. Our career sets the tone for a lot of the options that we get to have and how we get to experience life. And we also get to create a lot of impact directly through our careers as well, too. So you wrote the book, The Career Toolkit, which caught my attention because I love careers. I love the people who are in it. And I believe that while there is a lot of realities that can be hard to hold that happen within our careers, there's also a lot of magic in that adventure. And being able to hold those two things together is sometimes hard, but bringing the reality of that journey to life is critical, especially the skills that help us create the impact that we want to have. And that being a conscious and positive impact, not only to ourselves, but the people all around us. So when you wrote the book, you mentioned that part of it was to help people increase their professional efficacy. Can you tell me more about that?
So often, I have seen people who have a goal, have a dream job, have somewhere they want to go, something they want to achieve, but they don't know how to do it. And these are people struggling to get a promotion, struggling to be more effective at work, trying to find a job that brings them happiness. And they mean well and they have some capabilities, but they don't know how to use them effectively. And this really pains me when I see these folks, and I can think of coworkers. I think you can be so much more effective, but they're not. And how much better would not just their lives be, but our companies and society as a whole if all of us were able to utilize our full potential? And that was a lot of my motivation.
Mm. And so you had experience with MIT's Career Success Accelerator too, that also fueled a lot of the work that you did. Can you tell me more about the work that you did at the accelerator?
Yeah, let me set the context for how we got started there. In my own career, I knew early on that I wanted to become a CTO, a Chief Technology Officer. But I realized that to get that job, it wasn't just about being the best engineer. Yes, I had to be technically very capable, but there were all these other skills: leadership, networking, negotiating, team building, communicating. No one ever taught them to me. And I realized I need to develop these skills to be effective in that role, to qualify for that role. So I began to develop those skills in myself. I quickly realized these skills are not just for C-level executives. They are for everyone. Whether you're at the top, in the middle, at the bottom, solopreneur, entrepreneur, all of us can benefit from these skills. So I began to upskill my team. Now, as I had been doing this, MIT was getting feedback from the companies who hire our students, and they were saying, we want to find these skills and we can't. Not just in MIT students, not just in engineers, not just in college students. Universally, these are the skills we want in our employees, but we can't find them. And it's because schools don't teach them. So MIT wanted to put together a program to develop this in our students. And when I heard about that, I reached out, said, I have this content I developed for my team. I'm happy to give it to you. Hopefully you can use it. I thought that would be it. It'd be one and done. But instead, they asked me to stay and develop more content and then to stay and teach. And so for the past 20 plus years now, we have a series of modules where we're teaching these skills into our students. And the key is you can't just teach this by lecture. When we teach physics, say, here you go. Here, I remember we just scribbled down the formulas our professors wrote on the board, or we'd be in the lab doing the experiment. But these are experiential skills. You have to learn by doing. So we have a special type of course that's very hands-on. And after doing this for decades, I've learned what are the key attributes and what's the most effective way to teach them. And that's what I put into the book.
You mentioned that when you were starting your engineering career, you were very into the technicalities of what your expertise required. And I can't imagine how many years you spent, one, going to school and just trying to get through learning what you need to learn to even set your foot into your career. And then once you do, you're starting to just get your bearings on how does the environment of different corporations work, right? There's different forums and there's different ways of communication. And that's a whole nother classroom there to have to understand how to navigate the environment of different corporations. And so by time that we become aware of the need for these skills, would you say that it's early in our career, or if it's more mid-career? When was it for you? And what have you found is the experience for most people? Because not only are they not taught the skills, we don't have the time. We're trying to apply the core competency of our skill.
I was lucky that I figured this out early on. I got this in, I think, my mid-20s. I recognized the importance.
That's good.
and not just recognized, but did something about it. Because most
Mm.
people, if you ask them, is networking important? They're going to say, oh, yes. Yes, of course. I've heard of that. Everyone says it's important. Well, here's the thing. If people tell you it's important, have you actually done anything to get better at it? In fact, if you think about it, our parents, our teachers, or so many people have said networking, it's so important. It's not what you know, it's who you know. But no one actually stopped to say, and here's how to do it more effectively. We put into our savings, into our retirement, we say, well, I'm going to invest in the market. Okay, well, I better learn what's a stock, what's a bond. How do I figure out which fund to invest in? How do I watch my returns? Because if I don't, I'm losing money or I'm missing out on more than I could make. As you noted at the beginning of the show, our careers, it's one of the biggest components of our overall success in life. And by success, that means happiness, that means enjoyment, that means financial rewards. And we know networking helps you be more successful. Communications helps you be more successful. Negotiating, leadership all help you be more successful. Have you put any time into developing these skills?
Right. And how do we make that more concrete, though? Because sometimes in the hustle and bustle of our careers, we know that it's important, just like we know we should be flossing 3 times a day, but most of us get through, 3 times a week if we're lucky. How do we make that more concrete? I kind of think it's, like we have to have our own personal stories defined of where we're going, why we're going there, the values that drive us, the behaviors that drive us, setting goals, making them smart. We know that about our personal lives, but do we think about our career, the span of the 47 years that we spent investing in it? If we have that clear of a model of saying, okay, now that I am, let's say 15 years into my career, this is how networking looks for me. And this is why networking is important. And this is why I need to invest into 5 networking events every quarter. And how do I measure networking events? What is the criteria for success? How do we make it a need into where we are within our own career story?
That's a really subtle, important question. Let's look at the framework by which we evaluate that and similar questions. When we think about our career, so many people say, well, here's my current job, and in 5 years, here's where I want to be. In 10 years, here's where I want to be. And they pick a title. And that's it. That's their entire career plan. Now, if we think about our work, if the CEO walks into your office tomorrow and she says, here is a critical project. You're in charge. You've got 1 year to do this. You say, okay, great. I guess I'll see you in a year and cross your fingers. Hope we get it done. That's insanity. You say, okay, well, really important. Let's create a project plan. Now we know 2 things, and these are 2 things people trip up with their career plans. We know 2 things about our project plan. First, I have no idea what I'm doing on day 278. I'm on day 1. I will map out some sense of what I'm doing month 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, but it's not going to be as detailed as month 1 and 2. So the earlier part's more concrete, the other part's fuzzier. The second thing I know is whatever plan I put down on paper, that's not how it's going to unfold. Right. And that's okay. We're going to have check-ins, whether it's a monthly, quarterly, whatever, we have check-ins and we adjust. Well, if you wouldn't do a 1-year project at work without having a plan and check-ins and adjustments, why do you think you can have a 10-year, 20, 40-year career without any plan at all? It's insanity. So we want to create a career plan. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can be fuzzier the further out. And we want to have check-ins along the way. And what we need to do is, just like in our project, we say, well, if I need to be here at month 9, where do I need to be at month 6? If I want to lead a team of 100 people in 10 years, and I haven't led anyone today, I can't go from 0 to 100. I need to lead a team of maybe 50, 60, 70 people somewhere around year 7, 8, 9. And before I get there, I have to lead a smaller team. And smaller team, I can backtrack. So when we think about any of these skills, my leadership skills, what my network is going to offer me, I want to map it to those stages in the plan. and tie it in as part of the plan. I'll give you one more specific thing. I'm going to ask you to pause the podcast in a moment, but you have to come back.
Okay.
What you're going to do is you're going to pause the podcast, open up your calendar, and you're going to put an event that says, think about my career, and set it as a recurring event every 6 months. So now you will never go more than 6 months with at least doing some check-in on your career and thinking about, do I need to adjust that plan? So you can pause the podcast to do that, but then you have to come back.
Oh, I love that. And so if you were doing that today with your career, what questions would you be asking yourself?
I have a list of questions, and these, by the way, are available for free on my website. You don't have to buy the book to get them. The questions come in different categories. Now, here's the important thing. Many of us think they're questions like, how many hours a week do I want to work? How much money do I want to earn? Both very important questions, and do ask those. But then there are other questions like, how much time do I want to spend with my family? Where do I want to live? How much impact do I want to have on the world? All too often, we have our job and our career, and then we try to fit in family and life around it. But in fact, you should think about the life that you want and then find a career that fits into that life. So a lot of the questions are not just about your job, they are about your life and overall happiness, and then making sure the job aligns to that.
So when a lot of people are hearing this, at times they can think, Mark, that sounds great. But the reality within our careers is that challenges arise. And when they do, I don't know how to handle them and which specific skills will help me. To help us anticipate some of those challenges for someone who is, let's say, mid-career, and they're thinking about setting the time aside and looking at their career and creating a plan around it. Can you give us an idea of what is the ecosystem first that creates a healthy foundation for our career that we're taking into consideration? Look, you need to network. You need to have communication skills around conflict, around boundaries, around deadlines. And I know that that's a loaded question because there's so many aspects. But if you had to list just a few of what helps make a healthy ecosystem, and then how do we reverse engineer it to think about anticipating the challenges that would arise and then say, okay, now how do I match the skill, the strategy that's going to help me meet this so that I can be able to respond in a way that aligns with me being able to spend more time with my family because I'm reducing the confusion around projects, that I am creating a positive impact in the world because I'm handling conflict in a constructive way. What does that look like, that ecosystem of a healthy career?
Let's talk about what the skills are, and then we can talk about how to learn them. Because I can't universally say, well, this skill for this problem, but if we have the skills, this is why I call it the Career Toolkit. You've got your toolkit, and then you go, let me see if the wrench works. Nope, okay, didn't work. I'm going to try the hammer. Or even I can ask someone, what tool do you recommend for this? So the 10 skills, I have 10 chapters in my book, one for each skill. And these are not ones I just arbitrarily came up with. This comes from research at MIT and other schools who have looked at the corporate landscape, who have looked at the labor workforce and said, what are the skills that are going to be most valuable? 10 skills, they come in 3 sections. First section, careers. Creating and executing a career plan, as we talked about. The second is, I call it working effectively. Things like managing your manager, understanding corporate culture, corporate politics. Those are all important skills that we don't even like to talk about them. Chapter 3 is on interviewing, not as a candidate. We touch upon that a little, but there's plenty of stuff. You know how to find out how to answer an interview question. But so many of us have to hire other people, our subordinates, our peers, sometimes our boss. No one actually teaches us how to interview other people. It's kind of like saying to your 16-year-old, hey, so you're ready to drive. You've sat in the back seat. You've seen me drive, right? Steering wheel, brake, you got. Okay, here are the keys. Best of luck to you. But that's what we do with our coworkers. Oh, you've been in an interview before, right? Yeah, here you go. Best of luck to you. So learning how to interview effectively, because that really impacts who we bring in and finding the right people. The second section, leadership and management, there's a chapter on leadership. And then we look at the people side of management and the process side of management. They're separate skills. Third section is interpersonal dynamics, which has 4 skills: communication, networking, negotiating, and ethics. And these are the 10 skills, 10 top buckets that really cover the key skills that we need across industries, across jobs, and they're going to help you. Now, of course, your ability to lead or understand at 22 is different than at 42 and at 62. So all of these are ongoing skill sets where you will continue to improve.
And I like that you have a variety of different ones to tap into so that once you diagnose the organization that you're part of, right? Because perhaps you're part of a startup or you're part of a turnaround or your company's going through an accelerated growth mode or through a realignment, they're all going to present unique challenges and opportunities. Both give us an opportunity to create those bullet points at the end of our year. Because I know for me personally, when I was in the stages of growing my career, and every job that I had, within 6 months, I was able to receive a promotion. And I did that through a lot of these skills that you mentioned in the Career Toolkit. But it did come with helping me understand what is the environment that I'm in, what does the environment need of me, what are the people that I'm have the opportunity to lead need of me in order to meet their goals. And it was plugging and playing each time based on the problem that was presented and the opportunities that we had to drive. What kind of skill set based on this experience do I need to evolve? Do I need to practice? And then who do I have that has experience within my network that can help me gauge my success and also my blind spots? Because that's a big part of it, is our self-awareness. And it makes me curious to hear about your career. What, if at any time, did you ever experience a challenging moment in your career where using some of these skill sets helped you shift where you were going and get you back on what the right track was for you?
100%. From early on, figuring out what direction I want to go in so I can find the right next job or certain projects at work. Early in my career, was terrible at corporate politics. And I lost battles. The first one I lost, I didn't even know I was fighting it until it was nearly over and I had lost. And I said, well, that's a weakness. I have to address it. And I learned to get better at corporate politics. Just a note on that one, people hate it. I certainly don't like it. But corporate politics, it's like the US politics. You can say, I hate it. You can say, well, I'm not going to participate. I'm not going to vote. Well, then what happens? Someone else votes and you're impacted anyway. You can't ignore it, whether you like it or not. So you need to learn to deal with it. And so these other skills, communication, they're very common among engineers. Well, I know how to talk technical language. I can talk to other engineers. I need to learn how to communicate this to non-engineers. I need to speak their language to understand what matters to them and put what we're trying to do into their needs. So all these skills at different points, I said, well, this is what I'm focusing on today. This is what I'm focusing on next. And I actually, in my career plan, it's not just what are the jobs, it's recognizing, well, to get to this next job, I need to develop more of my leadership or more of my negotiation skills, or I need to get better tactically at marketing, at accounting, at technology. All this goes into our career plan.
And it's interesting hearing you say that, because I think most people may think that a career plan is something that you do when you're in high school or when you're in college and you're evaluating what your future is going to look like. But the reality is that we've never been here before. However old you are listening to this podcast right now, whether you're 15 years into your career, 2 years, or you're about to retire, you've never dealt with this specific organization, this specific set of people with these specific outcomes. And each is unique and each requires us to evolve and recalibrate and re-engage what some of these skills look like based on the playing field that we find ourselves in.
But let's talk about how you can develop these skills. Because no matter where you are, you can always stand to get better and improve. Now, the key thing is we learn these skills differently from how we've typically learned in school. In school, you sat there and your professor or your teacher said, here's a quadratic equation, wrote the formula on the board, we wrote it down in our notes, and then we'd see a problem and apply the equation and go, okay, I know how to do this. And we do it over and over. The real world doesn't work that way. There is no formula for leadership. There's no one
Yes.
saying, oh, right here, this is a networking problem. So now put your networking hat on and do it. It's very dynamic. It's very fluid. It's very circumstantial. The way to learn these skills, it's more akin to how we learn to play sports. Imagine if you just joined a basketball team and the coach said, okay, welcome, you're on the team, you qualified, so that's it, you're done, you're ready to play. Sometimes we join a company and say, well, you just got promoted, we're going to send you to a 2-day leadership workshop. That's like the coach saying, we're going to send you to a 2-day basketball clinic. Great, now you know everything you need to know about basketball. What do we do when we play sports? We say, okay, well, we need to do drills. We need to scrimmage and practice. We need to reflect. Maybe we watch the tape of ourselves or other people and we get feedback and we get coaching. That's what we want to do with these skills. These are practical hands-on skills. So now here's how we can learn them. This is how we teach them at MIT. This is how top business schools teach them. Create peer learning groups. Get other people from your organization, get into small groups. And by the way, on my website, on the resources page, I have a free download. Here's how you can do it. You don't have to buy anything. You don't even have to give me your email address. So I go through this in more detail. Create peer learning groups. I recommend groups about 6 to 8 people in size. You don't just want all your engineers in one group and all marketers in another. You want a diversity of backgrounds. Certainly classic diversity of gender and race, but diversity of experience and role as well. And if your company doesn't want to do this, no problem. Go create a local meetup group. Go find people in your other community groups and say, let's get together and do this across company. That's totally fine as well. So you get folks together, and then what you want to do is engage with some content. Now, you can take a book, for example. Yes, if you want, you can use my book, but you don't have to. You take a book and you say, we're going to read this chapter or this section on leadership. And then we're going to come together and discuss it. If you don't want to use a book, you can use articles, videos. You can use a great podcast like this one. All of you listen to a podcast episode and then discuss it. And it's in that discussion. We've all read the article or heard the episode, and we talk about it. And you're going to say, well, here's how I interpreted leadership. So, I had a totally different take. That's interesting. And I start to get a better understanding from the different perspectives. We can also do things within this group. Well, I have a leadership challenge. Here's what I'm trying to do. And as people talk about it, that's like scrimmage. Because you can't, with your actual team, say, hey, everyone, I'm going to try something new. And if you screw it up, okay, do over, forget everything I did today. That doesn't count. That was practice. Doesn't work. But in this group, we can talk through ideas and what might work. People can share, here's what I did in a similar situation, what worked and what didn't. That's like watching the tape. So creating these peer learning groups will help you develop these skills. And it does 4 great things for your organization. First, it upskills your team. Second, it fosters internal networks because you're going to meet people and build relationships in different groups. Third, it increases engagement. So important these days where we see lots of turnover. People don't just want a paycheck. They want companies that care about them. And fourth, it creates a common language. If the book you read is good to great, then you can say hedgehog, and everyone knows exactly what you mean. So you get all 4 benefits, and this is all completely free for your company. You can set this up internally with no overhead.
I love the idea of engaging in peer groups and putting a problem into play so that, because really, when I think about it, our careers are one of the biggest playgrounds for us to exercise these skills. When we were young, a lot of us learned business skills on the playground, and we forget as we become adults to continue to flex those muscles in the same way. And our career is one of the biggest experiences where we do get to create the simulation of a playground where we can practice these skills. These skills, for me, one thing that I found in having 2 boys who are growing and have so much to learn about life in terms of skills, they're transferable. I find myself using the same communication skills with them teaching them how to identify their values, their stories, how to communicate through change, how to lead challenges that they're having. Every time that I found myself re-engaging in a skill, and it didn't matter if it was in the beginning of my career or in the middle of my career, I saw it in a new light every time that allowed me to apply it not just within my work, but within raising my kids. And so the unique thing is that I love about this is how transferable these skills are.
Exactly. These skills apply, even though it's the career toolkit, they're going to apply not just in your career, but in other aspects of your life. And you can develop them in these other aspects. You noted that we tend to learn a lot on the playground, which is sad in some ways that school isn't teaching us these important skills. If you think about a professional athlete, how much time do they spend on the field performing, and how much time do they spend off the field practicing and preparing? But in our jobs, we show up Monday morning and it's go, go, go. It's just do. And we spend very little time stepping back, reflecting, developing, training. And we really need to do something to change that ratio.
And I love the idea of getting started with identifying our career plan.
Absolutely. It gives us a structure and direction for where to invest our time.
So, Mark, you mentioned something in regards to listening to podcasts or perhaps reading books. And sometimes after you do those things, odds are that many of us are probably going to forget what we heard and what we read. And so in order for that time not to be wasted, I know that you've done something with a new app that helps increase our efficiency there. Can you tell me more about that?
Yes, we created the Brain Bump app, and it solves this retention problem. Because how often do we read a book, say, okay, well, this is great, this is helpful, and then you forget most of it 2 weeks later? And one of the other problems is that where we read information isn't where we need information. If you read the networking tips in my book, you're probably doing it sitting on your couch at home. But you're going to need those networking tips a month later, right as you walk into that conference. And this is a problem with all media, with books, with podcasts, with blogs. In theory, you can have the ebook on your phone or your podcast player, but it's not efficient to pull that up 5 minutes before the event. So we created Brain Bump. Imagine if you took a book summary app, a flashcard app, and a daily affirmation app, and you put it all together, and you get Brain Bump. So with Brain Bump, you can pick from books, blogs, podcasts, talks, and classes. We're adding more every month. And you can say, oh, well, I've read Mark's book, The Career Toolkit, or maybe you haven't. We don't check that you've bought it. And you can download the tips from the book. And that has things that if you read the book, this is what you'd highlight. These are the key points to remember. Then you can either open it up to get a just-in-time, oh, I'm walking into that networking event. Okay, let me get those networking tips from Mark's book, from other podcasts and sources. There we go, I've got them. Or you might say, I'm a new manager, I'm a new leader, and there's a bunch of things I need to keep in mind. It's not a just-in-time thing. So you can set up, because we know you're not going to want to open the app every day, you can set up that you get a daily reminder of the content you want at the time you set. So for example, at 9 a.m. each morning, you get a push notification with a leadership tip. And as you see it over and over, you retain it better, it sinks in, and you start your day with, okay, I'm more focused on leadership because that's a skill I'm developing right now, or negotiating, or networking, or communications, or whatever you're focused on. You get that daily little reminder that helps you retain it.
I love that. And with that concept in mind, what are some of those key takeaways from our conversation that you want to help Brain Bump our audience retention around why investing in these skills is important, recalibrating our careers regardless of where we're at is important to us experiencing life in a way that feels authentic to our story?
A few of the things we talked about, the types of things that you would get off of Brain Bump. You wouldn't have a project at work without having a plan and check-ins to adjust it. You absolutely need the same when it comes to your career. We focus on investing in our finances, we need to put that same level of focus on investing in our capabilities. And of course, in the book, we didn't get into a lot of details because we had a limited amount of time. There's a lot to cover. We'd have specific things about how do you develop those leadership skills? How do you develop networking skills? Different tips, different techniques. For example, one networking tip I have in the book is I'm a big fan of business cards. I always make sure every coat I have, every jacket, every briefcase, every suitcase has a load of business cards in it, and I will never run out. If I run out of my wallet, it's probably in something else I have on my body. And it's things like that. It's other things that are more advanced. And when you hear the ones, you go, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. You might forget. But if you hear it a couple times, you start to remember, I better put all those business cards and all my jackets and all my coats in my closet, and then I'm always ready to go. So it will have ideas like that.
I love that. So as we get close to wrapping up our conversation today, I want to remind our audience that leadership is happening right now. It's raw, it's imperfect, it's vulnerable. But using the strategies that help us make it count is important because you're in the seat to create your story. The journey that we're on requires awareness around our story that we're creating, because the strategies that you use, the skills that you use, will either give flight to our story or weigh them down. Mark, how can our audience learn more about you and get in contact with you?
You can go to one of my two websites. If you go to thecareertoolkitbook.com, you can learn more about the book. You can get in touch with me or follow me on social media. You can see other articles I put out, or look at all the free resources I have on the page, completely free. I don't even need your email, including the Career Toolkit Development Program, which we talked about for how to upskill your entire organization. If you're interested in Brain Bump, go to brainbump.app. And from there, it has links to go to the stores, or you just snap the QR code and you can instantly install the app. And the app, which is completely free, has not only tips from my book, but lots of other books, blogs, podcasts, and sources that are ever growing. So the careertoolkitbook.com and brainbumpapp.com.
And we'll make sure to include this information in the show notes. I'm curious, what's chapter 4 looking like for you? What's the next chapter?
Right now, it is growing Brain Bump and growing a second startup that I have in parallel.
Oh, that sounds like you're going to need quite a few skills to reach into that career toolkit as you approach something new. So I'm excited to hear where chapter 4 takes you, and hopefully we can follow up with you on your journey. I appreciate you taking the time to illuminate the path forward for our audience. To our listeners, the ball is in your court. I challenge you to take action, continue the conversations that go beyond the surface level, and reach out to Mark to partner with him in your leadership journey. You are listening to Leadership Beyond the Title. We'll see you on our next episode. If you found even the smallest nugget of wisdom in this episode, share it with a friend and your friend will thank you. Let's continue the conversation with like-minded leaders and join us on Facebook at Go Flip the Script. Until next time, I challenge you to incorporate what you learned today to evolve your leadership impact.